Over the past 3 months, I helped this business scale to $73,000 in ad spend, driving over $300,000 in revenue at a 4.18 return on ad spend. All in all, this drove 2,360 purchases for this business in just 3 months. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact strategy and structure that we used for this business and how you can copy and paste it into your ad account right now. If you follow these 4 steps, you'll know exactly the structures that we use, the metrics that we like to optimize on, exactly how to optimize on those metrics, and then finally how to scale over and over again. So first off, hopping into this ad account, as I already said, we drove $73,000 in total spend at a 4.18 return on ad spend. That drove us $306,000 in revenue for this business and 2,360 total sales. So 2.36K total conversions driven. When we just take a look back at the campaign structure, you're going to notice we're only running 4 campaigns here. Now, there are different ways to set up your campaigns based on what kind of business you're in, what vertical you're in, what you're running. But what I really want you to focus on here are the core fundamentals. I'm going to break down each one of these campaigns and why they were so fundamentally critical to actually driving a ton of revenue for this business. So at the very top, we have our brand core search campaign. Your brand core search campaign is literally the lifeline of protecting your business. So think about your brand core campaign as a way to make sure that no other competitor possibly invades on your brand. So here's what we don't want to happen. We don't want someone to actually type in your brand name, let's say you're Nike, and we don't want them to show up in this top navigation or anywhere in this sponsored area. So for example, Nike's doing a fantastic job of this. Nike is literally owning everything on this page. I can't find anything on this entire page that's not Nike specifically. You can see in the shopping listings, Nike literally owns every single placement in shopping. They own the entire SERP, so they own this entire sponsored listing here. They also own the Google My Merchant listing, or rather the Google My Business listing. So they own everything on this huge screen that I have here. That is massive for them. There's no way any competitor could possibly leak into whatever they're doing here. Furthermore, when you scroll down, they actually own the very first organic search. And then as you continue to scroll, they pretty much own this entire page, right? So their Instagram, their Facebook, their wiki, their Google app. Okay, so here's an example of something you don't want to happen. We're just going to type in a software company called Asana. And as you can see right off the bat, there's a ton on here that's not Asana. In fact, the very first result is Monday.com. So here's how I think about this. If I'm a marketer, I probably know that there's sponsored results here, right? I know when I go to this page, Monday.com is at the top and I'm really looking for Asana. So I either need to click here or I could just scroll down to the organic listing. That might be how you operate, but 99% of people do not operate this way. Most people see the first, second, and third result and assume that what they searched here is most applicable to the very first result. Most people don't even know what sponsored means here. Most people don't even know what Google ads really are and how they function, right? We're in a very, very small niche in our entire industry for how we actually know these ads work. What a lot of people might do here, even though they typed in Asana, is they might click on Monday.com and then just sign up for Monday.com or now be interested in another product or platform, right? So imagine if your brand is bidding on multiple competitors here. So if you are a shoe company, if you are selling phone cases, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're selling, if you're showing up not in the very first slot, and even if you're showing up in the first slot, if your competitors are showing up in the second, third, fourth, etc., you're really, really critically losing real estate on your page, right? So this real estate is very, very valuable, right? Google's seeing this as there is opportunity for each of these advertisers to win. And in this case, I could see this and say, okay, maybe Monday is so much better as it claims to be. Maybe ClickUp is a really, really good alternative. And, maybe they say it's better on price or something like that. Maybe this is an opportunity for competitors to slide in. We need to make sure that for our brands, we're protecting our terms. That's what's most important. And this is such a good example. Asana is doing a very poor job of this because all they have is Asana A showing up in the second position. So they're losing to Monday.com. And then second, Asana, instead of just having something here where they could take up more real estate, they could talk about their platform, they could talk about the Asana official site or what you're looking for, right? They could say Asana official site and then put one of these little dashes here and say something like the best project management tool or shop now or try now or sign in, something like that, right? Instead of Monday is so much better. Obviously, I'm interested now. So I think you get the point here. It's key to make sure that you're not in that second position and you're not letting your competitors swoop in. Now, I know the counter argument to this. If I typed in Asana, I want Asana. Yeah, you do in that moment until there's other alternatives. Have you always gone for the same can of soda or the exact same dish at your favorite restaurant? No, because there's other options, right? And just like there's other options for that can of soda or your favorite dish at a restaurant or project management tools, there's other options for your e-commerce product, right? There's probably dozens of other options of brands who are very similar to yours, and you need to outmaneuver them. That's exactly why this strategy is so key. Now, the actual settings of this campaign are really critical too. So if you actually click into the settings of the campaign, and when you set this up, you're setting this up as a manual search campaign. When you go to set this up, it's critical to bid on a target impression share, right? So as you can see in this case, for this brand in particular that I've been showing you, we're bidding for the absolute top of page results. And basically you have three options here. Anywhere on the results page, top of results page, absolute top of results page. And as you can see by Google's definitions on the right side here, absolute top of page results is the first position among top ads. Top ads are adjacent to top organic search results. That's that Nike placement. That's that Monday placement that we just went over. We don't want to be anywhere on the results page. That's going to potentially put us all the way at the bottom, maybe somewhere in between. And top of results page is just going to get us in those first 4 placements. I don't care about being number 4. I care about being number 1 here. The second thing is percentage impression share to target. So this is something that a lot of people get confused on. A lot of people put in 100%. The percentage impression share to target is how often we want our ads to show up for the keywords that we give Google. So in this case, we are crazy aggressive, 99.9%. You never go 100%. Just a little tidbit. You never ever go 100%. You have to be willing to let just 1% of this go. So 99.9% is the absolute highest you could ever go. And in most cases, I actually advise brands to go around 90 to 95%. Here's why. You're going to show up for the most relevant people at the most relevant times when you're at 95%. If you go upwards of 95%, like in this case, the 99.9, we're basically saying, hey, it's okay if someone's not as relevant and we don't actually need to show up for them. So the 99.9 is extremely aggressive and it doesn't work like a perfect linear scale. That's super important to recognize here. So when we think about this 99%, it doesn't really work like your impression share forever climbs. You would think that the difference from here to here is nothing, but really in complete reality, the difference between here to here is as expensive as here to here, right? So the difference between 70% and 100% is almost the same as 99% and 95%, which is why it's really important for us to not overbid here and also don't underbid here. Last point is the maximum CPC bid limit. This is how much you're willing to pay at absolute most for each click that you're paying for. So what I highly recommend here is you set this just above what you're getting on average for your CPC. So what you want this to eliminate is clicks that are unreasonably expensive. When clicks are $5 or $20, we don't need those clicks. It's completely okay to let 1 or 2 of those people go to a competitor. If they cost $20, that's kind of crazy for a click. They better convert if they cost $20, right? And that's not a game that I'm willing to pay. So we like to really set our maximum CPC limits up to just over the average CPC. In some cases, like this brand here, we're actually setting that CPC limit up way higher. So as you can see from this data, our average CPC is $2.37, but our bid is actually all the way up to $9. This is the most aggressive version of this you can get to. And that's only because this brand we're actually referring to has a very large brand name. So if you're just starting on this, $2, $3, $4, totally fine. If you're going to get really aggressive, $9, $10, $11 is fine as well. If you have really high average order value, then yeah, you might want to set this higher. You might want to set this to 10 or 15 or 20, right? It just depends on how much each click is actually worth for you. Scrolling down through the rest of these settings, there's only one thing I want to highlight. Never ever select broad match keywords. In fact, in this case, because we're using a target impression share, we actually can't select any broad match keywords. So really, you're kind of safeguarded against this, so you don't have to worry about it. We're not excluding any brands and we're not bidding on new customers only, which are the 2 most popular settings that people like to talk about, because this is a branded search campaign. And when we dig further into this campaign, you're going to notice we basically have one key active ad group. This key active ad group, and I know you can't see these exact terms, but these are our most critical terms, right? So if you were here and you were thinking about what should I put in my brand core campaign, you need to put the most applicable terms for you. And I always like to use the Nike example because I just think it's so spot on. So here's what I think about. If you're Nike, do you want to bid on shoes? No. That's not a brand term, obviously. Your brand terms are Nike, right? Your brand terms are Jordan. Your brand terms might be things like Air Max, right? Different variations of your brand terms are really important to have in here. What's not important to have in here are things like that are straight away. You don't want to have red running shoes in your branded core campaign. And the last piece here is everything we are talking about is run on exact match. This is so key. Exact match versus phrase match or broad match is going to completely change actually what keyword you're bidding on here. The only one single exception, if you have a very unique brand name, let's say your brand name was Adidas before anyone knew what Adidas was as a brand, right? So it's a very unique brand, or you could even use Nike. No one would just wake up one day and type in Adidas that lives in the US unless you're like foreign of some sort, right? You would just never type in Adidas, or you never really type in Nike if you didn't know the brand. So Nike running its brand term on its own is actually at a big advantage, because like the brand name Staples, right? Because if you type in Staples, I love this example too, because if you type in Staples is technically an item, right? So while they are bidding on their brand term, which is great, like literally Staples, if I go to the shopping thing, is literally Staples. Like these are staples. So if I were to bid on Staples as a brand term, or Kleenex or Clorox, or things that are interchanged for the actual brand versus the product, then I would just make sure that in doing that, I was always using exact match and exact match only. And if I was not doing that, if I had a very unique brand name, so for example, if I was in fact Nike or Adidas, no one's going to mess that up. And then I would set for phrase match. So you could do phrase match Nike right in here instead of exact match Nike. In fact, little secret, really easy. I would actually do both. I'd run Nike phrase and Nike exact side by side. I think that would get you the best result. Now, don't go too expansive on branded search. It's just important you keep it nice and refined, okay? So we've built this campaign. We've established the keywords. We know the settings. We know the structure for just this one campaign. How do we optimize this individual campaign? Now, this is so key because I'm going to go through this campaign by campaign by campaign instead of just giving you the overview. I want you to get all the details of this so you could literally do this step by step by step. That's how this is so detailed, right? I want this to be so easy to take away and run with this. This search brand core exact campaign, we have the fundamentals done. How do we make it better over time? So first off, your budget is going to be restricted to how many searches and keywords your brand is currently getting. If you're only getting a few clicks and a few keyword searches per day, then yeah, you might only spend $10 a day on this campaign. In most cases, you could just leave it and let it be. However, if you're getting hundreds of clicks or dozens of clicks per day on your brand terms, then it's time to take some action. So what you're going to do is on the left-hand side, when you're clicked into the campaign, you're going to go to the search terms first. And once we get into the search terms, we're going to add a filter. What this filter is going to do, what I want you to select in this filter is search terms that do not contain, and then type in your brand name, or just type in a first few characters of your brand name. So if I was Nike again, I would probably type in the full Nike. I might even type in NIK, but for this case, we're just going to type in the full brand name, which I know you can't see. So what this has told me right away, and again, this is done right. So this is, clearly really good. Of the $21,000 we spent on this campaign, $9 have been spent on keywords that are not perfectly applicable to our brand name. So that's really good, right? Of the 14,000 impressions, 11 impressions were on keywords that we don't really care too much about. So I take that as a big win. And funny thing is, these actually resulted in 2 conversions, which is pretty crazy. What this is going to show you is all the search terms that are not applicable to your brand. And the easiest thing that I like to do here, just click the top box, add as a negative keyword. And in most cases, we're going to add this at the campaign level because it might still apply to other campaigns, right? We don't want to necessarily put this at the account level, and it's not an ad group exclusion because we just have one ad group in this campaign. So there's going to be a campaign-wide negative. Next thing you're going to do is click the X here. So now you're going to see all of your terms together, and you just got to go through them one by one. So we have 87 here, which is like really not that bad. This will take 5 or 10 minutes to go through them. What we don't want to do in this campaign is pause things down. We're not in the interest of putting a bunch of negatives in here. This is not a Facebook account. We're not cutting things left and right. What we're doing here is we're just really focused on making sure the keywords are healthy and accurate. If I was Nike, I'm looking for Nike. I'm looking for Nike shoes. I'm looking for Nike shirts. What I'm trying to avoid here is something that's like, what is the return policy for Nike? Or what is the latest Nike shoe that's coming out in 3 weeks? Or what shoe did LeBron wear that look like Nikes? No, those we need to get rid of. And I'm sure you could see by me just saying those out loud, how those are not applicable applicable to many businesses, right? You don't want people searching for your return policy, right? You don't want people searching for very random things that are stray from your business. You want people searching for the most relevant things that are specifically for your business. Now, the next thing you want to look at when you're optimizing, and really, actually, this is kind of a setup thing plus optimizing, is your audiences. So what you want to do is on the left-hand side, click on the audiences and then click edit audience segments. What this is going to do is allow you to set up campaign observation audiences. So as you can see right here, I have 26 different ad group and campaign observation audiences. Generally speaking, I recommend setting all of these up at the campaign level. And what you want to do is just create as many relevant in-market and customer cohorts as you possibly can. Observation audiences are literally just allowing us to view reports on additional criteria without removing our targeting, right? So we're not excluding people. We're not narrowing our targeting in any way. We are literally doing this as a fundamental way to look at what's working the best, and then we can make adjustments based on this after. So here's why this is so important, because once you go into your audiences and you click show table right here, you're then going to be able to see either at an ad group view or at a campaign view, depending on how you set these up. You're then going to be able to see all of the audiences that you're running. So I have 58 that are running here. I think that's actually a little high. Now I can see all of these key metrics associated to these audience segments. So what this allows me to do now is I could take, let's just say this number one segment here, and then I could make a bid adjustment based on this individual segment. So I could say this segment works better. Great. Increase the bid by, let's just say 20%. So this isn't going to be overly applicable to your branded search. This is going to be more fundamentally important when you're talking about our Performance Max campaigns and all the other campaigns that I'm going to really be diving into here. But this is just a really important feature of Google Ads that you really need to understand. So that is it for our branded search campaign. I'm going to move on to the next campaign, and just note that we're actually going to move a little bit quicker from this point forward because we went so deep on that branded search campaign. Now, heading back to our main dashboard here, we see that we have 3 additional campaigns. I'm going to make this really easy. The second campaign that we have here is actually a phrase match brand campaign. We're going to completely ignore this. It's actually just complementary to the brand core exact match campaign that we just went through in totality. So now what we're really focused on are these 2 campaigns here. These 2 campaigns in this setup are a Performance Max campaign and a search non-brand campaign. Now, in many videos in the past, you've probably heard me talk about having that relationship between Performance Max and potentially branded shopping, and that having different new customer acquisitions or potentially brand exclusions involved. In this case, I'm not overly focused on that. In this case, we have a smaller catalog and we're really just focused on the 20% of products that are driving 80% of the spend. I'm going to dig into this Performance Max campaign first. First off, what you'll notice in this campaign is we've spent $25,000 in this campaign to drive $69,000 in conversion value. That's a 2.72 return on ad spend over roughly the last 3 months. That drove 500 conversions at a $50 cost per acquisition. Huge numbers we're talking about. When we actually look into the settings of this campaign, you'll notice that I don't have too much that's overly complicated here. First off the bat, we're optimizing for purchases and we're bidding equally for new and existing customers. Now, you might say like, whoa, that's a red flag. However, we have a brand exclusion set all the way at the bottom. So here's how this works. We're allowing new and existing customers to come into play. However, we're not retargeting specifically people who are on our website because we want that retargeting to be done in different modes. What we care more about here is we care about allowing people who are anywhere in our funnel. Potentially they're in the consideration phase. Potentially they've been to our Instagram, they've been to our Facebook page. Maybe they've searched us on Google, but they haven't clicked or they haven't made a purchase in the past. Completely fine with retargeting those people. We're not really comfortable allowing this campaign to target people who are typing in our branded name like Nike.com. That's what we're afraid of here. So moving down, we're setting up our merchant center feed. We're using all products from all feeds. Very important here. We're just allowing everything to get pushed in. In terms of our budget, this is set based on the client's preference, but we're spending about $600 per day. And then we have our maximize conversions bidding strategy with a target cost per acquisition. This could vary. In your case, it's going to depend. If you're a business that has 1 or 2 products, target CPA is usually an ideal setup because it's very easy to predict. Now, if you have varying product prices and different average order values, then I'd actually focus on conversion value and I'd set a target return on ad spend spend here. So this is going to be dependent on the business. If you're a lead gen business, if you're in the high ticket services, it's very, very different than if you're selling an e-com business with hundreds of SKUs. Lots of SKUs, definitely conversion value, and you want to set a target return on ad spend. How you set that target return on ad spend is always up to you. It has to work within your business. If you don't know what to do, set it at break even. What's break even for your business? If you don't know what your break even return on ad spend or your break even cost per acquisition is, it's literally as simple as taking your average order value, so your AOV, and then minus your cost of goods. And this gets you your break even number. So if your average order value, let's say, is $100 and your cost of goods is $50, that means you're left with a profit of 50 because 100 minus 50 equals 50 profit. If you had that 50 profit left over, that means you need to break even with acquiring customer for $50. I know that was fast, but that would be the $50 cost per acquisition to allow you to break even. Now, if you were using that on a return on ad spend, then you take that average order value and you would say, how many times is 50 divisible into 100? And in this case, 50 is divisible into 100 exactly 2 times, which simply means you need a 2x return on ad spend to break even. That applies to every business. No matter what you're doing, just take all of your operating expenses, plug them underneath your average order value, and then you can get ROAS targets per order pretty simply. If you want to start to include other things like lifetime value, 1-year value, 2-year value, true lifetime value, retention rates, churn, all of that stuff, but very complex for just a quick video and a quick screen share right now. That is stuff that you really need to dig into. And I do advise you dig into that as your business grows, right? So if you're already a $10 or $20 million business and you're watching this, you probably know those metrics. If you're on your way there, if you're $1 million business already, fantastic. These are the things that are going to take you from that $1 million point all the way up and beyond to join that pack of 5, 10, $20 million brands. If you're just starting out today, don't worry about those metrics. Just take your average order value minus your operating expenses. Sounds like complicated stuff, but to be honest, if you want to run a successful, profitable business, it's how you have to do it. So back to our Performance Max campaign. We've also in this campaign allowed for automatically created assets to be selected. This is something I go back and forth with. It depends on the brand. This brand is very flexible with what we say. They're very comfortable. They don't have much sensitivity on this. So in this case, we do allow text assets to be created. Basically, what this is going to do is Google's going to use their AI, their algorithm, and it's going to use the content on our landing pages and domain and ads, and it's going to spin up new variations, new combinations with the assets that we've provided, right? This is just going to help with relevance. It's going to help with our ad scores. But some brands, and it's okay either which way you fall on, some brands are a little scared because it can misrepresent their brand. If you're in a sensitive category, don't use it. If you're in a non-sensitive category and you have a stomach for a little bit of this stuff, it's okay. You could use it. Finally, for final URL, this is something I always recommend you select. So for final URL, sending traffic to the most relevant URLs on your site when it's likely to result in better performance. Really, this is just making sure that people go to the right landing page. Always recommend it. Then as we actually drill into this Performance Max campaign, there's a lot to unpack here. Within this Performance Max campaign, as I already mentioned, this is $25,000 in spend, tons of impressions, and I believe this was performing at like a 2.7 return on ad spend. So within this PMax campaign, we have our asset groups. People obsess about asset groups. I have one. Would you believe that? We have one asset group and it works. And instead of creating dozens and dozens of asset groups, we test what actual things work. If you're waiting for the testing part of this video, here it is. When we run Performance Max, we're not concerned with creating dozens of variations and letting them compete with one another. That's a great strategy if you have hundreds of products. So if you have hundreds of products, you might actually have, asset group number 2, asset group number 3, and so on. And the reason you would have asset group 2 and asset group 3 is because you'd have your top 20% of products here, you'd have your next 10% here, you'd have your next, so call it 70% here, whatever, right? You'd have different breakdowns of products or even categories of products. For example, like you could have in this asset group, you could have all your shoes. In this asset group, you could have all your shirts. In this asset group, the final one, let's just pretend, you could have all of your hats, right? And if you set things up in this way, right, you at least know where is my money best spent. So it's a strategy I always recommend. It's something I constantly recommend to people. But for this case, as I mentioned, we're dealing with a very small amount of products, right? 3 to 5 products here. We don't need to overcomplicate this. We don't need to break things out too far because we could just see the individual performance in the products section right here in Google Ads, which is so much easier for us to review. Okay, so here is how we actually test and figure out how to improve all of our asset groups across our entire account. This is one of the most important things that you have to do to keep your ad strength high. And ultimately, this is such a good scenario because we're gonna be able to do this in real time. I purposely saved some of this just so we get optimized right now. Because as you can see, our ad strength is currently marked as good, right? That means there's opportunity for us. So ad strength is basically just 5 measures, right? They're not metrics. They're not something that we can say it's an 8.5 or it's a 7.2 or anything like that. It's literally just incomplete, poor, average, good, and excellent. You need to always be between good and excellent. All your accounts need to be good to excellent. If you're under good to excellent, you're running an uphill battle, basically. Like under good to excellent, you're fighting in the wrong direction. There's no need because all of your competitors that are bidding above you, that are crushing you in sales, are good to excellent, I promise. So just to actually wrap up on this is a super important point. This metric measures the relevance, quality, and diversity of your ad copy. Ad strength shows you how well an ad creative follows Google's best practices for optimal performance. So this is not a direct indication of how you perform, but it gives you more opportunities in Google's eyes and in Google's algorithm. A higher ad strength will also help you maximize your ad's performance combined with actionable feedback. Ad strength makes it easier for you to improve the effectiveness of your ads. Basically, if you're not marked as good or excellent, it is time to look into your ads, see what's going on. Whenever we see incomplete, especially, but poor and average, it's time to make adjustments. So what we do on a regular cadence, and what I'm going to show you exactly how we test for which assets, which copy, which images are most relevant, is that anytime we see the ad strength is good, we go into the asset group and we click edit. Once we're in the asset group, so sometimes it's actually going to show us exactly what's wrong. So in this case, you see images and videos are actually slightly like half full, which is bringing our ad strength to be missing this small little gap here. Now that's fine, right? There's going to be situations where, a lack of images or a lack of videos is going to be necessary. But as you can see with this little insight, add a horizontal logo to reach excellent. So this is just such a little thing. And again, I've showed you the results on this campaign. This campaign is crushing it. By all means, it has scaled drastically. It has worked very well. Google is basically telling me, hey, add a horizontal logo and our ad strength is now going to be deemed better in the eyes of Google. So what you need to definitely make sure you have in these cases are at least 10 headlines up front, at least 3 long headlines. You can go all the way to 5 if you want to. 5 descriptions, absolutely. And then on the images, somewhere between 10 and 20 images. But to be honest with you, these are broken into different sizes. So while you can't see these exact images, what you might notice just by seeing the blurs is that oftentimes we have the same image. For example, this image on the right side all the way over here, and then this image right here is the exact same image. However, it's in a different cropped format. So generally, it's pretty easy to get to 20 images because it's only actually 6 images spliced 3 times plus a few extras. Now, what we've noticed here is that we actually don't have a horizontal logo in place. So this is really, really easy for us. Now, what's kind of cool is Google tells us like there's a suggested logo based on, the brand that we are, but I'm actually going to upload the real logo here. So this is an easy opportunity for us to improve the ad strength from good to excellent. Super simple. Literally, we're just going to go in here. We're going to select or really just add and upload the most relevant, newest logo that is horizontal. Really quick win. And then lastly, on the videos side of things. So videos, when it comes to Google ads, are a little bit touch and go. We don't like videos to really dominate ads. However, if you don't put videos into your Performance Max campaign, you're going to see some sort of auto-generated video show up, which oftentimes gets spent on and it looks really bad. So what I do recommend is just 1 or 2 videos. And if you're a video heavy brand, if you feel like your videos are super good, they're very relevant, they're very engaging, then it's okay to add, the maximum 5 videos. The last piece here is your site links. So for your site links, make sure you have a full run of site links. In this case, we have 10 account level site links. We're linking to every page on this website. Let me show you what a site link looks like. We're going to use our Nike example again. Everything we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are different examples of Nike site links. So we want as many site links that are relevant, and they have to be relevant. We don't just want to throw crap in there. We want as many relevant site links as possible. So depending on your brand, you just want to have your different categories here. One of your most important pages, you could have a shop now button in here. You could have a membership button here. You could have, if you sell t-shirts, your t-shirt collection, if there's a specific drop you have, make that drop a site link. And then finally, your call to action. So your call to action is going to vary definitely depending on what your actual call to action is. If you want people to apply, put apply now. If you want people to sign up, sign up. Generally speaking, since I'm mostly talking and working with e-commerce brands, it's going to be shop now in almost all cases. Shop now is the most fundamental call to action. Do not try to trick people here. A lot of people like to use learn more or even automated. Learn more will get you more clicks. It will. It will actually get more people interested to click on your site. It feels like less of a commitment. Shop now creates a micro commitment for the consumer. Basically tells them, hey, I'm going to buy now. Shop now. Like we are shopping right at this moment. That micro commitment usually leads to slightly higher conversion rates, which is absolutely worth a couple cents of a trade-off for the cost per click. Moving into the more assets, we do like to make sure our promotions are set up and our structured snippets are set up. Basically, you can feel free to fill out all of this information except for lead forms. If you do not accept leads, then do not create lead forms. And then moving down to the bottom, your display path. If you're linking to a specific collection or a very, very specific place, and of course, fill in your display path so it's a little bit more clear to the consumer. However, in this case, we're not. We're driving to the homepage for the most part, and we're letting Google decide what pages the person should be driven to based on that person's search and so on. So the key here, the most important part here is that on a very regular basis, usually every 7 to 10 days, we're going in here and we're updating anything that's not marked as excellent. The other thing that we're doing here, and this is equally important, the other thing we're doing here is we're clicking the view details button in our Performance Max campaign. Now this is going to show us literally as of 1 month ago, all of the conversion value and all of the important information that we used to never have. So this is like huge, right? This used to just be impression data here. This used to be completely different. Now we could actually see in Performance Max the assets that drove the most amount of conversions. So right off the bat, you're going to notice that what we're seeing here is a mix and mash of a whole lot of conversions, and there's a lot of double counting. It's okay if there's double counting. There should be, because in many cases, asset number 1 and asset number 2 are shown at the same time. So they're both counted. So what I like to do very simply is sort this by the total number of conversions, right? So we could see total number of conversions here, and then we're just scrolling down to the bottom and we're just taking a look at what got the worst, right? What was the lowest amount of conversions? What was maybe auto-generated? What do we not want, right? I could tell you right away, this bottom one here, this here, and this here. These are 3 that got some of the lowest number of conversions, and they were automatically created. What I'm also doing is I'm looking for anything that the performance is marked as low. If it's marked as low, very straightforward. We're literally taking this and we're replacing it. You can't actually pause it from here, but we're just taking this and we're going to replace it with a brand new headline. So if this was, again, white Nike shoes, I'm going to change this to a completely different variation because we need to get rid of this low performance, right? Because this is the equivalent, if you're used to running Facebook ads or different ad accounts, this is the equivalent of cutting your bad creative and making sure what we have up here, best, good, best, making sure that these get your spend. It's critically important. The other thing you can do to just make this a little bit easier is you can filter this by the asset type, which is something I like to do when we're working with a lot of assets. So I'll look at all my headlines all together, right? So now this is just showing me my headlines, which is a lot easier to comprehend. And I'll start right off the bat by, removing anything down here that I just don't think is completely applicable because they're automatically created assets. So I'll literally just remove these automatically created assets, and then anything that's low. So in this case, this bottom one that's low with 0 conversions, I'm just taking it and I'm just going to replace this headline on a very, very regular cadence. Talking really like every 2 to 4 weeks for something like this. The highs, the best goods, these are the ones that we need all the conversions to go to. These are the most highest converting for your business. It's critical you have them. And then the last thing that I like to look at is our combinations. I'm not actually acting on too much here, but I'm just making sure that generally speaking, our combinations make sense. So I noticed right off the bat that my headline here, which I know you can't see all of the data, but my headline here is way too vague, right? And because it's too vague, it might be attracting the wrong click, right? That's so critical, right? Because if I'm too vague, my click-through rates might go really high. But ultimately, if I'm driving the wrong clicks, then I'm attracting the wrong people and I'm paying for clicks because this is a cost per click, a pay per click platform. If I'm paying for the wrong clicks, paying for too many clicks, then I'm wasting a ton of cash. So easy to make and fix these adjustments. That is everything on the Performance Max side. That testing, that headline testing, that image testing, that copy testing, when done, especially at the asset group level, is so critical, right? You could do this on a very regular basis. It's going to make such a difference. You can see all our performing assets are all marked as best, right? Because we've recycled these so many times. We've changed the next over and over the course of 3 or 4 months now, that now we have come to a subset of square images here, because that's the asset type I'm using, that are deemed best by Google, right? They are deemed in performance terms. Google is marking them as best, which is amazing for the algorithm. So moving back to our campaign, we've really dug into each of these campaigns so far, and I'm going to wrap up with our non-brand search campaign. So non-branded search is really meant to show up whenever someone's searching for anything related to our business, but not directly speaking about our business. Again, we're just going to keep using Nike. So Nike is a branded search, right? We know this is a brand name. What's not a branded search are running shoes, straight up, right? And once we search running shoes, some of our shopping results that come up are a mix, right? So we have On showing up quite a bit. We have Nike showing up most dominantly. We have, some Amazon listings showing up. So it's a little bit all over the place. And over time, with these different changes, with different searches that we push in here, we're going to see very different products show up. So best running shoes is not a term that Nike bids on, right? Nike's very specific. So it looks like they're bidding a little bit, I should say, but for the most part, we're bidding on Brooks, we're bidding on very heavily, a little bit of Hoka and a little bit of No Bull. And as we continue to go, we see that same trend, right? Just one or two Nike results. And this is more spread out because it's not a branded term. So the ideal scenario for you in your business is that you have some sort of ownership over the broad terms that you want to be aggressive on, right? That are most important to your business. You own part of these terms. So it depends on how competitive your space is, how much money there is in your space, how your barriers to entry exist in your space. For example, if you're a jewelry business, and yeah, it's going to be really hard to just own the word jewelry, right? Like owning the word jewelry is extreme. There's thousands of jewelry brands. There's probably like 100,000 plus jewelry brands, and thousands and thousands of those are doing millions of dollars already a year, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on Google Ads. So how do you outmaneuver those? The way you outmaneuver those is you don't worry about the term jewelry. Right? You're never going to win on jewelry. There's 1,000 brands you can think of off the top of your head. What you do focus on is your specific core competency. So if you're a jewelry business that never tarnishes, or if you're a jewelry business that has a 100% refund rate, no matter what, no questions asked, right? Think about your core competency and write it in here. So jewelry, no tarnish, really simple. We've already removed some of the shopping feed. So shopping has now really come down. So in our previous search, you actually saw that the price points were in the 20,000s, 30,000s just by me typing in jewelry. But now, once I get a little bit more specific, we start to see multiple brands here. So we're not seeing one brand dominate anything. And we see a little bit of repetition. For example, we see Avaria jewelry, and then we actually see them again later. We see Ana Luisa, and then we see Ana Luisa again later. So we kind of just see the same brands pop up a few times, which is good. That means we've narrowed down, right? So what we want to do when we're creating our non-brand search campaigns, we want to just think about what are the most critical things to your business. No matter who you are, no matter what brand you are, there is something unique about your business, and that's what you need to focus on when you're creating your non-brand search campaign. So within your non-brand search campaign, I highly recommend you segment your campaign out by different products or different categories. This is the first time we're going to be doing this throughout this entire setup. Performance Max was very simplified, branded search was very simplified, but your non-brand search campaign should generally be pretty segmented. The reason for this is because the keywords are going to differ. And if there's different volumes for different sets of keywords, then Google is automatically going to push your budget to wherever the most volume is if everything's mixed and matched together. Let me show you exactly how this works. So if we take a look at my setup right here, I have 4 active ad groups. Within these 4 active ad groups, this top one is spending the majority of the cash. If I pushed these search terms that are existing in this ad group into all of these, so if I combined all of these into just one like mega ad group, then what would happen is instead of the 11,872 going to the terms here, this would be a greater disproportionate amount. It would actually skew even heavier to this ad group. That's not what you want to create. You need some sort of balance, and then you need goals associated to each ad group because you probably have different average order values and different lifetime values associated to each product set or different groupings within your business. So what we recommend you do is create ad groups for different core product groupings. So if you're selling shoes, I'm actually going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to go with Brooks because Brooks really focuses on functional shoes instead of lifestyle shoes. So for Brooks, they could really easily break out their ad groups by most of what they have down here. Now, what you'll notice is some of these are really similar. Treadmill and gym is going to be extremely similar to walking and road. Trail is going to be really similar to hiking, right? So what Brooks could do in this case, instead of having a setup that combines all these ad groups together, into one. And instead of having a setup that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 ad groups, which is too many, they can mix and match these ad groups in the appropriate fashions. So what I would do is I'd have, this is rough guessing because I don't know this brand too well, but I would have road, walking, and treadmill. That would be number 1. I'd have trail and hiking as number 2. I'd probably put support and wide as number 3. And then I would probably put racing and track as number 4. And depending on how important lifestyle was for them, I'd probably put that into number 5. Right? So that gives me 5 ad groups as opposed to 11. We've cut it down in half. And I'm sure if you actually know this brand, if you know this category really well, you can even condense that down further. So by pushing these into 4 or 5 different ad groups, we can then create specific keywords to each of those ad groups. So continuing on this same path, if we were really focused on, let's go with the hiking and trail. So we're thinking people, at least I'm thinking people that are hiking, people that are in the woods, people that are trail running, right? So for our search keywords, we're going to have a mix of all 3 match types. This is very different than what most people recommend, but what we found in our studies is that this works better. So when you go to create your keywords, I'm gonna show you exactly what I do for Brooks. We would have trail shoes, we'd have trail running shoes, and then a couple variations based on what's most applicable to the business. And as you can see, I'm doing this in phrase match. So I have quotes around each of these. I would then take the exact same keywords. I'm literally going to copy and paste these, and I'm just going to switch the quotes or the phrase match to exact match. Really straightforward. All right, so now we have exact match variants in here. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to just remove the quotes altogether, because when you have nothing around your keywords, now these become broad match keywords. So now looking at this here, we have 2 phrase match keywords, 2 exact match keywords, and 2 broad match keywords. This is going to give us massive amounts of reach. It's also going to focus most of the spend and really what's most important to us on these exact match terms. Finally, we're going to be able to see all of the performance of this in our insights and reports and in our search terms. So just like we manage our brand core campaign, we're going to manage this in a very similar way. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to have a lot of keywords here. As you can see, I have 7,000 keywords. That's so many keywords. It's going to be hard to manage. The very first thing we want to make sure we're doing is we don't want to be bidding on any of our brand terms. So as you can see from this example, this is our brand name. I know you can't see it, but we have spent only $47 on this brand term, where this entire campaign spent $6,000. So really small ratio. Some things are going to slip through the cracks, but that's really good. If you're currently looking at your non-brand campaign right now that you're actively running, you just did that. You put your brand name in there and you have, 40% of your spend on brand terms. Newsflash, unfortunately, it is not a non-brand campaign, right? It's a brand and non-brand campaign. So we want to go through all these search terms. And as crazy as this sounds, I go through these one by one. 7,000, it's going to take some time. But the good news is, once you do this one time, the next time you do it, it's only going to take 20 or 30 minutes. And this is generally a practice that you're going to want to do on a very regular cadence. Every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, this needs to get done. This is going to improve your account every time you do it, no questions asked. It is a time suck, but it's worth the money. So let's say you run into a scenario where you see a lot of your brand terms, or you see a lot of keywords that are the same. Right? So you see a lot of keywords that are completely irrelevant. You need to get rid of them. You need to get rid of them quick. Now, what I like to do when I optimize here is I always sort by search term, because what you'll notice as you do this is you see things that are very, very similar. So you'll see the same thing like 4 or 5 times. That allows you to exclude that very quickly. Right? That's how I get through these fast. And let's say you do stumble upon things that you do want to get rid of. There's 2 ways to approach this. You can simply click them and click add as a negative keyword, and you can move them into your campaign level. Really simple. That's actually what I'd recommend in most cases. However, as things get a little bit more complicated, you expand. So in this case, we have 7,000 search terms. What you're going to want to do, so let's say our exact match negative, because this is how it would show up, is Nike. Now, instead of just exact match Nike, because it might be like Nike red shoes size 11. So if it was Nike red shoe size 11, maybe I actually want to include anytime red shoes show up. If I did want to do that, instead of putting in exclusions every time I see the word red shoe and constantly creating these negatives, what I would do instead is I would phrase match. So I'd start with a quote and I would type in red shoes, or even maybe go to the next extreme, because if I just don't want anything to ever say red, then I would just go red as an exclusion, right? Really straightforward, really simple. You can do this with your competitor names. You could do this with anything that Google thinks is relevant for you, but as a business owner is not, right? That's what's important here. And what you'll notice is that over time, doing this dozens and dozens of times, you will have significantly less overall keywords. You'll have a lot less search terms, which will of course make everything more relevant and steadily improve your account. All right, now keep in mind, what I just showed you is one example. There are hundreds of approaches. There's so many strategies that we like to take on Google Ads. Now, if you follow the details within this video, you're gonna get a better result. If you're optimizing your campaigns, if you're testing new creative, testing new headlines, and you're working with Google's algorithm, you're basically figuring out what's working according to Google's eyes and what's not working. You're using your data points, you're replacing the bad with good. Over time, your account is going to grow and you're going to see incremental improvements. Now, that doesn't mean this is an overnight success. That does not mean you do this and all of a sudden you see a 20 and 30 or 40, 50% improvement in your account. But what it does mean is that every time you optimize, every time you make these small adjustments, you see a 2, 3, 4% improvement. And as you see these 2 or 3 or 4% improvements, naturally over the course of 3 to 6 months, your account goes from a 2 ROAS to a 2.2 to a 2.3 to a 2.5. And all of a sudden you're raking in profit and you're able to scale significantly faster than all of your competitors. So look, overall, this is the structure and our testing format that we're using across Google Ads for most of our clients. If this was way too complicated and you're running an e-commerce business right now, go to the moonlighters.com to apply to work with us and see if you're a fit today. If you want to just keep learning, and if you got value out of this video, definitely let me know in the comments below. I try to reply to every single comment as often as I can. Shoot us a like and hit subscribe. Thanks everyone. See ya.